Okay, all good. So welcome to ProductTank Hong Kong, the first event in the year. So I'm Amanda, one of the organizers of the ProductTank Hong Kong meetup. Who is the first time here joining ProductTank events? Wow, more than half. Okay, so welcome and thanks for joining. And so tonight we are very delighted to have Marty. So Marty is the founder of Silicon Valley Product Group, and he's very experienced product veteran in the Silicon Valley, and also a very notable author of many different product management books. So I believe many of you have read his books before. But before I invite Marty to do his sharing, I'd like to thank a few sponsors tonight. So shout out to George from JobsDB. So thanks JobsDB for hosting us here tonight. This is such a great venue. It's like one of the dream offices in Hong Kong. And also shout out to Clement. So Clement from Acumen. So you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Amanda. So hi, nice to meet you all. My name is Clement. I'm one of the co-founder of Acumen. And the other co-founder, maybe you've seen him, is my twin brother that is just at the back. Yes, so we are a boutique digital consulting company, and we are happy to and very proud to participate in building some of the amazing products that you might use in the day-to-day for big clients. So yeah, we would like to participate in building this community of product enthusiasts. So if you want to connect with us later on, please feel free to reach out to our team. And thank you again, Amanda, for organizing this.
Thank you. And thank you for all the great refreshments that you sponsored. Yeah, so if you have not yet grabbed what's that wrap? Sandwich. Feel free to grab one. I don't think they would like to take it back. So do grab it when it is fresh. So for those who are actually joining ProductTank events for the very first time, we are a group of product managers hosting meetups irregularly. You know how busy product managers are. And we are actually having like maybe 4 to 5 events every year, discussing many different types of topics, from product management to UX to even how we grow our products, how we queue our products, how we making sure our users are happy about our products, and how can we relate back to the product life cycle, right? And how we maximize the benefits to our company and our users. So we have a team of ProductTank organizers here. I believe Rio. Hi. Yeah. So and Abby. Yeah, shout out to them. They help us a lot in organizing a lot of these ProductTank events. So ProductTank events is actually also a global event. So we have ProductTank meetups all over the world, like more than 200 cities. So just go to ProductTank.com and you can find more. If you travel around the world, you happen to visit some of the cities that ProductTank meetups are hosting, feel free to join their meetups as well. So it's actually sponsored by a company called Mind the Product Group. The company actually hosts a lot of workshops as well as very big conferences in London, in San Francisco, and Germany, Hamburg, yeah, and some other cities as well. So do check out their website, mindtheproduct.com. Without further ado, maybe we can have an earlier start. Yeah. So welcome, Marty.
Amanda, and thanks everybody for coming. I don't know. Was anybody actually signed up for this before I had to cancel because they canceled my flight because of the pandemic? This was in like 2020. It wasn't announced? About to get on a plane. Huh. Well, anyway, this is overdue. It's my first time coming here to Hong Kong, actually, and first time talking to the product community here. I have been a lot of other places in Asia, but I'd never had a chance to really get here. I just came from mainland China, where I was for the week, because this book is actually just released in simplified Chinese last week. It's supposed to be released in traditional Chinese now, but I don't know if that happened. Does anybody know if it happened? This is sort of the classic published state of publishing in the world. So I don't know if the local publisher did that or not. English versions, though, have been available since March. And hopefully, if it's not available in traditional and you would like that, it should be soon. It's supposed to be. So let's, what I was doing in this sort of recent set of tours, I was also in Australia talking about this. I was also in Europe talking about this. And I'll be in San Francisco in a few weeks talking about it too. But really, it's the kind of things I've been talking about for a long time, which is basically what we call today the product model. What I was hoping to do with this group, well, really what I was hoping to do is get to meet the local product community. So I'm grateful for everybody that came here. I want to encourage you to interrupt and ask lots of questions. This is much more interesting for all of us if you do that. I understand why that can be difficult in mainland China with the language differences, and there was translation help, but here I have not seen that as a challenge. So I hope everybody feels free to just jump in. What I thought I would do is kind of give you a high-level overview. Actually, let me sort of level set. Has anybody here actually seen the English version of this? One, maybe 3 or 4. Is it available locally somehow, or public library? Wow, love that. Well, I'm sure Amazon will get it to you as well. That's probably how people get it. All right. So what I'm going to do then is give you an overview of what the book's really trying to talk about. And then what I think the most useful part is there's some things always between the lines on the page that don't really talk about in the book, but we should probably talk about in person. Some of the messier things. And so I wanted to save as much time for that as possible. How many of you have read the book Inspired? Oh, good. Well, so we have that foundation. How many of you might have read the book Empowered? Few of you? All right. Amanda's my one loyal reader back there. But so has anybody seen the book Loved from my partner Martina? No, that hasn't come out really that much yet. It's okay, so Loved is on product marketing. I didn't write that one, but so let's get into this. First of all, I just want to show you where we're coming from, because this is very important to understand the perspective. There's a lot of ways to do product out there. There's kind of 3 major ways to do product out there, and I'm happy to I inevitably have to talk a little bit about the other 2, but what I'm really trying to do is encourage you to seriously consider, if you're not already convinced, to start working like the best. And that's the 3rd model that I wanted to talk about. But there are lots of people out there all around the world that talk about the other 2 models. And in fairness, there's a lot bigger market for the other 2. Really, that's where the money is. If you're like a trainer or certifications or anything like that, that's where the money is. the biggest market. Most companies have no desire to really work like an Amazon or work like any of the best companies in the world. They don't even know, most of them, that it is different. And if they find out what it is different, they often don't have the appetite for it. But for those that are interested, that's what I want to talk about. But we make no secret about this. We were created to share the techniques of the best companies. So sometimes people get frustrated because they want us to help them with their old ways of working. And we're like, we don't do that. We're happy to introduce you to other people that do. So I just want to be clear. We're just sharing here the perspectives of a narrow view of the world, just specific slice of companies that happen to be the most valuable companies in the world. So that's sort of what makes it interesting. Okay. What is the product model? Is this what, George, you wanted? I was thinking you were saying you'd have a different screen also, but no. Is this what you wanted? I just want to make sure it's working the way you want it to work. That's all. So it's good. You're good. You're good. All right. Then let's talk about the product model. First of all, it's not a process. It's not a framework. It's not a playbook. That's the most important thing to understand when we talk about product operating model. It's a conceptual model. That's actually why we like the term product operating model. By the way, we didn't come up with that term. In fact, if you have read Inspired, if you've read Empowered, you know that we don't even name this way of working. We avoided intentionally naming this way of working. Honestly, in our writing, we just say, do you want to work like the best or do you want to work like the rest? That's it. But unfortunately, when we decided to write a book on moving to this way of working, if you're going to write a whole 400-page book, you kind of need to name it. You need to have a name for where you're going to. But we didn't want to invent a name because for those that know about marketing, that is really time-consuming and expensive, and the battle we'd no desire to pick. So we were looking for terms for this, and the most common one is actually product-led or product-driven company. But we don't like that because the politics, that sounds like product management is going to take over the world. And that's exactly the wrong message you want to give to a company where they're very nervous about what this might mean. So several companies, a handful of companies really that we know, they use the term product operating model, or really product model for short. And we like that because it's a model, it's a conceptual model. And conceptual models, they can be very useful and they're not prescriptive. So that's why we kind of went with that. We didn't coin it, we just adopted it. But it is a conceptual model. So what is it about? It's about achieving outcomes. If you had to summarize the difference between the product model and the other models are about output. They're about shipping features. Might as well mention the other models. The most, I don't know what's the biggest out there. It's probably Scrum teams or, God forbid, SAFe teams, if you know what SAFe is. That's like, in Silicon Valley, that would be considered the worst of the worst. But there's a lot of the world that uses that, mostly IT shops, mostly old school companies. In that model, it's product owners, you've heard that, agile product owners and developers. That's about output. It is about predictability. That's its purpose. Everything is trade-offs. That's what it's trying to optimize for, predictability. The second model, I don't know what's bigger, but the other big one is feature teams, referred to as feature teams or stakeholder-driven feature teams. This is what most product companies that aren't using the product model are doing. Basically, this is where stakeholders in your company, they prioritize the features and the projects on the roadmaps, and the roadmaps are given to the product teams, and the product, and those roadmaps are prioritized lists of features and projects, which are, think about it, features and projects are output. And the job of the product team, the feature team, is there to implement, design those features, build those features, deploy those features. That's, but again, features, projects, output, also predictability. That's a lot of the world, at least a lot of the product world. The third model is what we're talking about here, which is known as empowered product teams. You've probably heard that. And the difference is these teams are all set up to achieve outcomes. And instead of giving them roadmaps with features and projects to build, you're giving them problems to solve with business results to achieve. So sounds pretty simple conceptually, moving from output to outcomes. But if you've ever tried, it's very hard. It's very hard. Results is very hard. To give you a sense of just how hard it is, the Harvard Business Review did an article a couple of years ago summarizing most companies' product roadmaps. What percentage of the items on the roadmap actually delivered the business value the company was hoping for? Because remember, every item on a roadmap is there for a reason, usually a very legitimate reason. Yet, I don't know how many of you know this, but generally 15 to 20% deliver value. The other ones don't, which is an incredible amount of waste, right? 80% plus waste. So it is much harder to deliver business results. And nobody is suggesting that the features and the projects on the roadmaps were, dumb ideas. They're just ideas. That's the key. And they're not problems to solve. So we need to solve them. And that's why at the highest level, the product model is all about moving to outcomes. That's all the best companies care about, is solving real problems. Solving problems in ways customers love, but work for the business. If you don't do that, we fail. Doesn't matter how many features you ship. If you don't solve the problem, you fail. Okay. And so what does that really mean? The product model boils down to a set of product first principles. And this is the part that has always amazed me. We were just talking before this that, I've been a chance for years to get in early with a lot of great product companies, initially just in Silicon Valley and around the world. And it is amazing to me. You can be at a company like Apple or a company like NVIDIA that does hardware or devices. You can then go to a company like Stripe or a company like Amazon or Google or Netflix or Spotify or Shopify is doing software services. And they're very different kinds of products, yet the principles are the same. Somehow the principles are the same. Even though those companies all have very different cultures too, the principles are the same. In the new book, if you read it, you'll see that there are 20 product principles that we've identified. We didn't invent any of them. We're just observing that they all have these 20 principles. It's really what we were taught about product. And they all none of them are going to shock you, but most of them are not used in most companies. A good example, just so you could see what I mean. One of the fundamental principles is that if you want to achieve outcome, this is what we mean normally when we say we're trying to innovate. We're trying to solve real problems. And a lot of times that requires innovation, more than just little incremental optimization. In order to innovate, you just have to be willing to experiment. That's a principle. If you're not willing to run experiments, good luck. I don't think you are going to innovate. That's pretty basic. Yet most companies are not willing to run experiments. Some companies will claim that, oh yeah, we run Optimizely or something, where it's a little A/B test for just a surface level thing like changing a color or a call to action. That's not an experiment. We mean real experiments, different ways of solving problems, tackling real risks. If If you're not willing to run those experiments, though, you're not going to innovate. So then the question becomes, how can you do this fast and cheap and safe? That's that's an example of a first principle. And by the way, we are in the middle, well, or I think it's still the beginning. We are 2 years in on a major technology transformation going on. I shouldn't use that word really. A new, innovative, enabling technology, of course, generative AI, that everybody here is probably impacted already to some degree or another. And that, one of the big questions has been, well, how will the product model stand up to something, a technology that is that disruptive? And so far, not only is it standing up, but the companies that are experienced in the product model are the ones doing this disruption, which of course is the whole point. And you can see the ones that are left behind, that are being left behind. In fact, another one of those principles is you got to start taking advantage of your engineers and stop just treating them as coders. It's one of the most fundamental differences between a product model company and the rest is how they use their engineers. Who do you think is doing the innovation? It is not your executives, it's the engineers. In fact, it's individual contributor engineers. That's the little secret in the tech industry, is the primary source of innovation are individual contributor engineers. Yet in most companies, especially in the feature team model and in the delivery team model, the engineers don't even see the ideas until sprint planning. So if that's how you're working, it's the opposite of what we're talking about. Okay. I want to emphasize there is no one right way to create products. That's why I believe it's all about principles. If you're working on a new device, yesterday I was with Oppo, how do you say it? Not sure the right way to say it, but in Shenzhen. And I've been with them before. They're amazing. They're doing some great stuff, some really innovative hardware, consumer devices. And, you know, that's a very different company than Alipay, who I was with earlier, a very different kind of company. So that is, you wouldn't expect the same way to create the products, but I would argue the principles are that's what we focus on. Okay. Yeah, you heard me say that we often refer to this, or have referred to it as moving from, or the difference between how the rest works to the best. But it's also referred, and I'm saying this so that you can recognize all these conversations online, moving from projects to products. So a lot of people like that language. I like this, especially when I work with CEOs and CFOs directly. It's very much time to market is important. There's no question, but not as important as time to money. So time to market is hitting a date. Time to money is solving a problem, hitting a business result. So it's actually a lot harder to achieve time to money. And basically every CFO I know cares about time to money. They want to know what it's going to cost to get this return. Okay, this is the very common language out there for this discussion, moving from feature teams to empowered product teams. Oh, it stopped working. I have no idea why that happened. Yeah, from output to outcomes. That's what we're really talking about here. Okay, let's talk about this. Double click. Yeah, from output to outcomes is the highest level, but now what does that really mean in practice? And the way we describe it is there are 3 dimensions to the product model. And it's really important to understand this because a lot of people, in fact, my next article is about a lot of people confuse the product model with it's just agile. There are some people that say it's just agile, or what they really say is it's what agile was supposed to be. because Agile's kind of been taken over. There's a lot of noise about that. We can talk about it if you want, but it includes what Agile was supposed to be. That's this, but that's a small part of this. In fact, I would argue one of the reasons most companies that already did an Agile transformation did not get the business result they wanted is because they didn't even tackle the hard problems. The hard problems are not actually this. The hard problems are these. So we're going to go through each of these three so you can get a good holistic view of what we mean by a company running this way. The truth is, I could describe this lots of different ways. There's no, lots of different orders. There are three dimensions, but there's always a good discussion about what's the best order for a company to transform. Usually, I explain it this way, but then I recommend 1, 2, 3, but then I recommend that they actually go and transform in the order of 3, 2, 1, the opposite order. You'll sort of see why as we go. But for now, let's just talk about the three dimensions. The first is changing how you decide which problems to solve. Now, that language is all in the language of problems to solve and outcomes. But what that really means is every company of every size has to decide what they're going to work on, right? What are you going to invest in? Every company does that. Most companies in the US just finished that for the year. And we're in the new year now. And so they're getting to work. That process is usually difficult for companies because what they're doing is they have so many opportunities. So just imagine, I bet every single person in this room would say they have way more opportunities that they should pursue than they can pursue. That's normal. I've never really found less. How do you decide? In fact, your future is very much going to be a consequence of, did you pick the best opportunities to pursue? Did you pick the most important threats to respond to? If you're chasing a bunch of technology that's not ready for prime time yet, or if you're chasing a bunch of ideas that are in the research phase and not really ready to productize, you'll probably burn through a lot of money. But if your timing is right, you've made some good choices, you'll probably see great results. That's the whole idea of planning. Unfortunately, most companies, the way they do this, the CEO just says, look, we've got 5 business units. I'm going to give each general manager a percentage of the resources, and I'm going to let each general manager decide their roadmaps. And those roadmaps are going to get teams to build those features. That's basically how it works. And that's not the worst thing in the world. It's just, it's not looking holistically at what the biggest opportunities really are. And that's, in fact, there's a lot of very strong companies out there today. One of the strongest I know is Stripe in the financial services area. They're doing well on everything I'm talking about here. They're really doing well, though, on this first one. And I would argue their biggest reason for success is this first one, making very good choices holistically at the opportunities that they should pursue. Changing this, it's actually not technically hard. What's hard about it is it's politically hard. Because it's very hard to convince the stakeholders of your company to let go of that control they have over the resources without first earning their trust. And the key is, the next item is how we earn their trust, which is why I recommend politically that you earn that trust first, and then you've sort of earn that seat at the table to say, I think we should look at this opportunity. So that's what I'm going to go into next, which is changing how you solve problems. So if the first first dimension is identifying the most important problems to solve, and I want to point out, if you don't change to problems to solve, you can stay with what you have right now. Your stakeholders have roadmaps that they control. That's not a bad step one. All you have to do is go to each item on the roadmap and reverse engineer what problem is that stakeholder trying to solve and what is the business result they're trying to achieve. That honestly takes literally about 15 minutes to do for each item. There's even a little technique out there called an opportunity assessment to do that. It's easy. It's a useful discussion. If I was the product manager on some feature I'm supposed to build, I'd take a few minutes, I'd ask for a few minutes of time with the stakeholder, and I'd say, I see that you want us to build this feature. You want us to implement, support for a new payment method or something. Okay. Can you clarify for me the problem that you are trying to solve there? Is it international payments? Is it the underbanked people in the world that aren't able to use conventional methods? Is it, what is it? Could be a lot of things legitimately. Tell me what the problem is that you want to make sure we solve, because we want to make sure we solve it for you. And then next, can you tell me what you would define as success? They rarely say launch the feature, because that's not success. They'll say, well, I'm hoping for a 5% boost to revenue, or I'm hoping for a decrease in churn rate, or whatever. But we want to understand what that measure of success is. That's a short discussion. It's once in a while the stakeholder will say, good point, I never thought about this, come back to me or something. But most of the time they have some ideas in their heads. And we want to understand that, because once we've done that, we're essentially this is called an outcome-based roadmap. There's a name for this, because you can do that each quarter. You can take a conventional roadmap and turn it into an outcome-based roadmap. And now your product teams can be real product teams and go and solve those problems. But then they have to have the techniques to be able to learn how to quickly, inexpensively, safely, effectively solve hard problems. And for a lot of product people, they've never been asked to do that before. They've just been told to design and build features. The good news is most people know that's not very satisfying, and they want to actually deliver results. But it does require new skills. This is referred to as product discovery. This is what product discovery is. This is why product discovery doesn't exist in a delivery team, doesn't exist in SAFe. It doesn't really exist in a feature team, even though the truth is a little bit of discovery is there. What are they doing? If you're a feature team and you're given a roadmap with a feature, you haven't converted it to an outcome, then you have to do a little design. You have to do some design to implement that feature. And you might do some usability testing. I hope you do, but who knows? And you would build, and you'd hopefully do some QA, but that's not discovery, right? You've already been given the solution. You're just fleshing out that solution and building it. So discovery is more, we've got a problem to solve and an outcome to achieve. We need a solution that will do that with some evidence that it works. That's a new skill set. Most importantly, and this is what I want to talk about, it's a skill set that requires some different competencies. The biggest one, it still requires product managers, designers, and engineers. The difference is designers and engineers is essentially the same job. They're just given more ability to contribute to a real solution, not just build what they're told. What's fundamentally different is the role of the product manager. That's a tricky one because it's often in a feature team, they're usually called product manager, but it's a very different job than an empowered product team. And that is an extremely different job than an agile product owner. Just to be clear, an agile product owner, that is a role on a delivery process to build, as opposed to a product manager on an empowered product team is a job on discovery. That's your job, discovery. So it couldn't be more different. And that means retraining. And the main challenge for companies moving to the product model is retraining your product managers. Or for many of them, it's not retraining. They've never been trained. This is just all new. Now, the good news is, with few exceptions, you can get somebody trained to the level they need to inside of 3 months. I don't think that's that bad. Some people think that's crazy. 1 week of training should be enough, but I don't think that's realistic. But I also don't think that 3 months is too much. Sometimes it's less, but it's rarely too much less than that. If you're willing to put in 3 months, though, of serious effort, and especially if you have a manager that knows how to do this, that can help you, coach you, you can do this. Okay. The third area is changing how you build. Build, test, deploy. Now, the truth is, most companies I talk to that have been in the tech space for a while, this is a non-issue. They did this 20 years ago. When Agile first came out, this is what it was great at. It was basically Scrum, sometimes Kanban. And what did it do? It made teams start releasing no less than once every 2 weeks. Once every 2 weeks, each product team. Now, good teams today, they're releasing many times a day. That's continuous deployment, CI/CD. Hopefully most of you are doing that. I just saw a survey on LinkedIn, literally last night, that said only 78% of teams couldn't do that, couldn't even release once every 2 weeks, which is horrible. If you're releasing monthly, that's called big bang releases. That's bad for you, and it is definitely bad for your customers. If you're releasing quarterly, you should be ashamed of yourself. That is just embarrassing. And many of you know the standard way SAFe is implemented is quarterly releases, which is why anybody that knows anything knows that SAFe is Agile in marketing name only. It's pure waterfall, which is nothing wrong with being pure waterfall if you're going after a different goal, which is predictability. But the truth is, it's not even very reliably predictable. But I don't even want to waste time on that unless anybody here really thinks that's a good thing. Okay. So changing how you build means getting serious about this. What it really means is no more fake Agile. That whole trend of replacing real Agile with these things that are monthly or quarterly is just known as fake Agile. So no more of that. You just can't take care of your customers. You can't move the way you need to move. You can't respond to the market if you don't have a reliable, small, frequent, uncoupled releases. That's just sort of blocking and tackling basic skills. So normally, if the company is not doing this yet, you got to get your act together on how you build software. Once you've done that, you can then introduce product discovery. And by the way, just this, if you haven't done it, it is amazing how much respect you earn from the executives, including the CEO, when you can diagnose, fix, and deploy and verify a critical change for a customer in hours or minutes even. They are, when they're used to monthly things, this is life-changing for a CEO. So that's important. But then you can get down to business and start solving hard problems. Solving hard problems in ways customers love but works for the business. That's where you earn real trust with the executives. That's where the job actually becomes the job people love. Because you're not taking over, but you're truly collaborating with the leaders of the business. And this is really how all my favorite companies are working. And also, I'll be honest, this is where innovation happens, right here, right here. So this has always been my favorite. Strategy is probably a bigger impact, but this is the fun stuff. Pick your favorite products. This is where it happened, right here. Okay. And once you've earned that respect because you have shown that executive you can, instead of only 20% of their money spent getting a successful result, now they're seeing more like 80% of the items they're funding really delivering results. Now you're their partner that they've always wanted and needed. So now when you are talking to, say, the VP of International, and you say, when we were working on this problem last week, we saw a real opportunity. I'd love to talk about that with you. You've earned the right to do that. So one thing I should mention around this, because, the truth is, the more companies I talk to, the more sensitive I become to the politics. It's because it's all about people, and politics are real. So if you permit me, this is going to sound very political. And I don't mean like Donald Trump political. I don't mean that. I mean like people. We're dealing with people and personalities and, egos, especially. Realize with product discovery, there's two kinds of product discovery. It's always been problem discovery and solution discovery. Problem discovery is first of all, it's identifying problems that have not been solved that our customers could use, often referred to as latent needs. But we are looking for things that we need to do better. That's a problem discovery. And also, even if the problem is well known, like churn rate is too high, meaning not enough customers like our service, so they don't stay with us. It doesn't mean the reasons are well known. So you may need to understand more about what's going on. That's problem discovery. And it should go without saying, but if you don't understand the problem, you have almost no chance of solving it, right? If you don't understand it. So it's pretty obvious you need to understand the problem. The other side of the equation is solution discovery. Once you understand the problem, the real name of the game is to come up with a solution. But here's the thing that most product teams don't really understand. That's everything. Customers don't buy the problem, they buy the solution. And it's, we were talking about Ben Horowitz before. He's one of my favorite product thinkers in the world. Ben likes to say, if you boil it down, what's so hard about product is that if you don't come up with a solution that is dramatically better than the competitors, you lose, because it's very hard to get people to convert. And he likes to argue that that means roughly 10 times better. That's a pretty high bar. But pick your favorite product. If it's perceived as on the order of 10, like Slack, when that came out, it was perceived as dramatically better than, remember, HipChat and all those other products that were out there. And, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for something that's significantly better to get our customers to buy our product or to use our capabilities. And that is hard. Here's why I'm saying this. Every empowered product team with the cross-functional skills is more than capable of not just, solving the problem, but they're very capable to identify new problems to solve, identify opportunities. Even though they're capable of identifying problems, I encourage them not to. What I encourage them to do for the problem discovery is to trust the stakeholders. Because you have to realize, think for a minute, you're a stakeholder, you're a VP International, and you have been lobbying probably for years for major things to be fixed. And still not fixed, still not fixed. You know there are a set of problems out there. You're certain there are problems out there. And you finally get this product team and they're finally going to work, but the first thing they want to do is go find the problems for themselves. And by the way, not in a week, in months. Often they'll want to take months of research to and at the end of it, and I hear this directly from them and from the CEOs, at the end of it, they found the same things we've been telling them. And here's what I try to tell product people. The stakeholder is almost certainly right that this is a legitimate problem. You can argue forever if it's the most important problem. There's no way to truly know. Let's say there's 5 obvious critical problems. How do you really prioritize those? Nobody really knows. You can't know how much money you're going to make until you've solved the problem and seen if it's way better. So you don't know. What you do know, it's a real problem. And if in the very remote chance that the stakeholder completely misread the situation and it's not really a problem, in solution discovery on the first days of testing your ideas, you'll figure that out. So trust the stakeholders. And the reason we do that is because what you need to do is pace yourself. You have to realize when you work this way with outcomes, as soon as a team it's okay, it's the start of the quarter, here's your problem to solve, the clock starts ticking. And if you spend all your time understanding the problem and leave no time for coming up with solution, you will not solve that problem. Because in order to do solution discovery, you need to try many iterations. And that's where you need your time, not in the problem discovery. Does that make sense? I say this because, there's the obvious politics with the stakeholders. On the other side, a lot of times product managers and designers, they really do love learning about new problems. And I agree, I love it too. But they kind of have to, show some discipline there. Because until you build a track record of delivering great solutions, nobody's going to be too excited about seeing you spend all this time on the problem. Does that make sense? It's sensitive. I hope you think about it. Anyway, once you've done that, and you've now shown for several quarters we have delivered real business results. First of all, I promise you, your company is going to adore you. They are going to adore you. But then you've got a seat at the table for this. And this was the first thing I was saying, and how impactful it is, product strategy. So that's the order I would recommend. Makes sense at the highest level? So first, we're trying to change how we decide which problems to solve. Then we need the skills to solve those problems and then to deliver the solutions. Okay, let's talk about a couple other points. There are 4 competencies here that are critical. And they're tricky because all of these are terms that you already have, probably. You probably use it. Some companies have product owners rather than product managers, in which case you almost certainly have to change that. But you hopefully have product designers, you hopefully have senior engineers, and you have some kinds of leaders of product managers, product designers, and engineers. That's the product leaders. However, these people, in most companies moving to the product model, you really have to revisit each of these 4 competencies, because this is what it really means to move to this model. It's to introduce the definitions of the competencies we're talking about here. We'll talk about that in a minute, but just to do the easy ones first. The only real difference between a tech lead and a senior engineer is a tech lead agrees that they're going to be responsible not just for how you build, but what you build. So that is a senior engineer, has the respect of the other engineers, that is signing up for product discovery work. Now, realistically, it's about a half hour a day, but the point is they need to take responsibility, not just for how they engineer and architect, but also what they build, the solution itself. if they're not I will tell you the vast majority of great engineers, this is what they live for. This is what they studied for. So they want to do this. Not all do, though. Some of them just want to build. They're just like, I love engineering. I love architecting. I just want to do that. Great. They're a senior engineer or even other jobs like a principal engineer, but they're not a tech lead. Tech leads need to sign up for taking responsibility. And not only are they participating, but like I said, they're the single biggest contributor to true innovation. I should maybe be clear on that. Why is it the tech leads are so key to innovation? It's because they're working with the enabling technology every single day. Unlike designers, unlike product managers, unlike executives, and especially unlike your customers. That's why innovation doesn't come from any of them. It comes from these engineers working with the technology. They're the first ones to see when something is just now possible, which is why all these amazing, I mean, it's hard to keep up with the innovations going on with Gen AI right now. Maybe there was a little bit of a lull for a while, but it's picked back up. But that is, that's what's going on. The engineers are trying these things and seeing things that are now possible and showing that to their company. The companies that are doing nothing are generally because they're not even asking their engineers what they should do. There's there's so many great quotes from Steve Jobs from when he was alive, but I think maybe my all-time favorite was Apple's famous for design, but you have to understand engineering is even bigger there in practice. He liked to say, we don't hire all these engineers to tell them what to build. We hire all these engineers so they can show us what's possible. That is a very different philosophy, but it is the same philosophy at every product model company. In fact, Bill Campbell, who was literally the guy that coached Steve Jobs on this, taught him this, and also taught Jeff Bezos, and also taught Larry and Sergey at Google remarkably. He liked to say the single most important thing in a product company is empowered engineers, which is what we're talking about. An empowered engineer gets to take responsibility not just for how it's built, but the solution itself. All right, so that's what we mean by a tech lead. A designer, most designers, they are not interested in just making it pretty. They are interested in designing an experience. Like again, Apple's famous for this. Design is not just look and feel, it's how the product works. So we need real designers. Those two are usually, you have those people. They might be buried in your organization, but you have them. Product manager is the tough one. If they're a product owner, an agile product owner, and if they're like most agile product owners, the only training they've had is something like a CSPO or a PSPO class. You have to treat them as basically a brand new employee, a brand new hire. They know virtually nothing. And hopefully you have to decide if you're their manager, if they have the potential, and hopefully they do, and then you need to train them virtually from scratch. Because the skills of a product owner, that's a backlog administrative role. That is not what we're talking about. I'm trying to remember if I have this. No. So let me say it right now. You know what product owners probably do. And I will say this also with feature teams. If you're a feature team product manager, yes, you might have that title, but if you think about it, in a feature team, who really is deciding the solution? It's a stakeholder. And what the product manager on a feature team is doing is gathering those requirements from the different stakeholders, documenting them in stories or PRDs, and working with a designer to come up with some designs and then bringing it to sprint planning. And what they're really doing is project management. They are facilitating, coordinating. And I want to be clear, that is a valuable role. Somebody needs to do that role. It's just not product management. That's the thing that's always been frustrating. Feature teams, a lot of people take the job because it's called product manager and they go, this is not what I signed up for. because it's project management at its core. So those people, if they love project management, then I always encourage them, be project managers. We need project managers too. Great. But if they are not happy with that, then train them how to do their job, which is product discovery. In order to do that, now we're talking about product model, product managers. In order to do that, the first thing is, and you can't do anything without this, you have to become an expert in your users and customers. You have to. Otherwise, you have no leg to stand on. And it should be obvious what competent stakeholder or executive is going to trust a product manager that knows nothing about the customers. I mean, they would be irresponsible if they trusted you. And this is usually amazingly enlightening. I think it's one of the best possible things to do, but it should be obvious. But you have to be one of the experts in your company on your users and customers. The good news is you can do that. When I was an engineer that wanted to learn product, the person who was coaching me said I wasn't allowed to make any decisions until after I had visited 30 customers, 15 in the US, 15 in Europe, and he arranged the trip, 3-week business trip, totally changed my world. And the remarkable thing is I didn't even think I needed to do that. He knew better. I didn't think I needed to do that because I thought I was one of the customers, because I was going to product manage a product for developers, and I had been already a developer for 10 years. So I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, all I can tell you is that is never true. You are never your customer. And he's right. And I learned, and by going to these companies and meeting developers at these other companies, I realized we were in a bubble, especially in Silicon Valley. We were in a bubble. The real world was very different, and I had to learn because that's who was going to buy these products. Second, deep knowledge of the data. How is your product used? That's your job. Designer and the engineers don't usually do that. They rarely have the need or the understanding to do that. That is the product manager. Deep knowledge, the hardest one is actually deep knowledge of the business. This is the part that takes most of that 3 months. That means you need to understand, because you're responsible as product manager for the viability. That means understanding how the product is funded. How is it paid for? How do you monetize it? How do you market it? How do you sell it, service it? So how do you, is it compliant? Is it legal? Is it respect privacy? Is it ethical? That's on the product manager. You have to know those different constraints. You don't have to be the expert, but you have to be literate in each of those. I know that when I was going through that onboarding as a new product manager, I said I had to go visit these customers. Well, that was the least of the issues I had to do. I'm embarrassed to admit this. But I did study computer science, which I loved. There's nothing embarrassing about that. The problem was I literally had no finance courses. You have a finance course? I had none. I felt so embarrassed later that I didn't have this, because the truth was I was a huge knowledge hole. How could I possibly conduct useful conversations with the business side of the company if I didn't even understand the basics? And so this is not just finance. This is also the business KPIs. I didn't know what they meant. I didn't know what was good and what was not good. You can't be a product manager that illiterate. That's what I was. The good news is it wasn't that hard to learn. He arranged a book for me to read on basic finance, and then he arranged for a person in the finance department of my division to sit down with me twice a week over lunch and tutor me, literally tutor me on the KPIs in my product and what they meant, which ones were good, which ones were not. All I can tell you is that every word he said was like a completely new world to me. It was just something I had no exposure to. I also didn't know about another really important aspect, which is called go-to-market. How does your product actually make it into the hands of your customers? you know, as an engineer, you worry about pushing something live. You don't, what does that really mean though, as far as getting to the customers? What are the channels? How is it marketed? How do people find out about it? How do they try it? How do they actually purchase it? Do they get it from retailers? Do they get it from resellers? Do they get it directly? What is the model? I didn't know any of that. And I had to learn. I didn't know what the roles were. I didn't know what each of those people did. The point is, this is where that 3 months goes. This is what's necessary for a professional product manager. Think about it. Who else on the product team has the answers to these questions? It's not the engineer, it's not the developers. This is the product manager. And if the product manager doesn't know this, the teams are not going to come up with viable solutions, which means now you're back to a feature team because you got to go back to the stakeholders to make all the decisions. And they think you're just a waste of space. Okay. So product manager is a big one. Here's the thing. The reason we have such a sorry state of product managers in the world right now is because these people don't know how to do it either. And so they don't know how to develop the product managers. It was easy for me to learn because I had a manager that knew this very well. Like he'd done it in several times. And so that's why it is literally, this is a principle, a leadership principle at Amazon. It's a leadership principle at Google. At Apple, they call the leadership principle experts lead experts. The point is, you never, in a product organization, you never have a manager that's not also an expert in what they're managing. So that whole idea of a people-only manager, you know what I mean, where they just manage the person, but they have no idea what that person's really doing. That's about as ridiculous a concept as exists in the world of product. So that's a non-starter at every product company I know. The first idea is that those managers better know what they're doing. So engineers report to great engineers, designers report to great designers, product managers report to great product managers. So that's kind of should be obvious, but that is actually the key to success and the key to scale. Okay, so that's what we need to fix. That's why, you know, I was curious how many of you read Inspired. It talks about these three. What was realized after Inspired came out is I needed to talk more to these people because they were the enablers. So Empowered is for these people. And only a few of you read it. I just had the hugest surprise in mainland China because I just found out that the publisher that translated Empowered, which unfortunately came out during the pandemic, so I didn't know this, I couldn't come here, literally did not, they decided to translate the title Empowered to literally Inspired 2. They called it Inspired 2. And their thinking, I was told, was that, oh, well, Inspired was very successful, so this will be like the sequel. So, oh my gosh. This is what happens when you can't speak the language. I can't literally do any quality control until, but anyway, this is key. And those of you that are responsible for these people, I genuinely hope you read Empowered. That's who it's for. I think it's the most important of the books. It is admittedly the most complicated. It's the hardest topics. Okay, so there are a set of concepts. I want to get to Q&A here, but we've actually talked about product teams, strategy, discovery, delivery. There's one other, which is, I think, a very important concept around product culture. It is not the same as company culture. Company culture, you know, is usually a function of the personality of the founders and what they believe is Sometimes I love the company culture. Sometimes I would never want to work there. You know, there's a big range of company cultures. Product culture is orthogonal to that. Product culture is about how do you make decisions? Who makes decisions on the product? What are you optimizing for? Innovation or predictability? This is a product culture decision. Okay, yeah, I won't make you read this, but these are the actual 20 principles. There are 4 principles for each of the 5 concepts. Yeah, if you want to take a picture, feel free. You can also find it online. We didn't create this image, but one of the product coaches out there in Europe did, and he kindly let us use them. Yeah, I would argue this is what's important with product. And honestly, for 20 years, when I coach product people, product leaders, and product managers, and engineers, and designers, this is what I'm coaching them on, the principles. To me, that's all that matters. If you've worked with me, you know I could care less about all the process stuff you have to do. If the principles are right, the people will make good choices, they'll do good work. So it's really important that people understand the principles. And by the way, even the first edition of Inspired, which was published in like 2008, is with maybe one chapter I would wish I didn't include, but it's largely relevant. And the reason is just because we talked about the principles. Okay. The other part that we haven't talked about is it's one thing to empower teams. Most people understand empowering a team is a good idea. You definitely don't want to micromanage professionals, right? Because none of you want to be micromanaged. You're all overqualified to be micromanaged. On the other hand, this idea that unfortunately a lot of people have, that the way to empower is to hire good people like you and then get out of their way. You may have heard that phrase. That is setting you up to fail. That is not how you empower. Now, we've been saying for many, many years, this is like this tagline of the book Empowered, that the key to empowered product teams is not less management, it's better management. That is the key. What is better management? If you've been on social media the last couple months, you may have noticed there's a hot topic in the product community called founder mode. Has anybody heard that? Founder mode. There's a lot of confusion behind it, but this is what it's talking about. Founder mode is emphasizing that hands-off management does not work. Micromanagement does not work. What works is this experts leading experts. So it's sort of, I love that this was getting attention because I didn't like the term actually founder mode much, and I've tried to explain it in my writing as founder style leadership. One problem with founder mode is makes people think it only applies to founders. It doesn't. In fact, the bigger the company, the more important it is. I would argue the only reason Stripe, Amazon, Apple, these companies we're talking about are so successful is because they have that style leadership at scale. Their job at Apple University is to teach people founder style leadership. The big test for Apple was when Steve Jobs died, because he was clearly like that. The question was, were his people, did they learn it? And we learned that yes, they did. In fact, today I will tell you, of all the big companies I know, I would say Apple has the best product leaders in the world. Just they do. And there's some great ones at other companies, but they seem to have the biggest bench of amazing product leaders because they understand this. Now, here's the thing. Why is this important? The whole idea of empowered teams is you want to push decisions down to the team because they're closest to the technology and they're closest to the customers. So logically, they should be making most of these decisions. However, like I said, if you just get out of their way, they're setting them up to fail. A team can't make good decisions if they don't have the context. In fact, another great company, Netflix, likes to say, lead with context, not control. What that means is lead with strategic context. That's this, not command and control, which is the top-down micromanaging. What does that mean? Well, product vision, product strategy, Team topology. Team topology is how are you breaking up the product teams so that each team is responsible for owns something important. These elements are necessary for all the teams. And I want to be clear because there's a lot of nonsense in our industry. And one of those nonsensical things is when agile coaches go around and tell product managers that they should each have their own product vision. That's completely ridiculous. Think about it. If you're working in a company with 25 product teams, do you really want 25 product visions? Does that make any sense in any world? It makes no sense. Do you want 25 product strategies? Of course not. You missed the whole point. The point of product vision and product strategy is to look holistically across, making these choices of where we're trying to go together. That's the point. So that's just, I think, they don't even know what product vision really is. Okay, and then what product strategy is really, I don't know how much we want to go into this, but product vision is describing the future you're trying to create for your customers, how you're going to make your customers' lives better over 3, 5, 10 years. Product strategy is how we're going to get there, but this quarter. This is done, maybe once every 5 years. This is done every quarter. What are the problems we need to solve now? Because we have to pay the bills on our journey to get to 5 years from now. So that's why product strategy is so important. And in product strategy, we're identifying the set of problems to be solved. Those are called team objectives, and they're assigned to the product team. Usually 1, maybe 2 a quarter. That's the strategic context. Yeah. One of the things we wanted to do in the book was, because honestly, and one of the big reasons we wrote the book, Transformed, is because so many people believed it's impossible to move. They did admit that if you were born in Silicon Valley, if you started in this model, yes, you can do this. But their belief was if you're not Amazon, if you didn't start this way, you can never go there. But we knew that wasn't true because we've literally been working with companies for more than 20 years to move to this model, so we knew it wasn't true. And we thought, well, maybe we should share these stories. And so in the book, we included a dozen, there's more than this, examples from all over the world. None of them are Silicon Valley stories. And all of them were not born in the product model. They were either from before the product model or from leaders that had no idea. So they all had to move to this. In major industries, sales-driven enterprise software, healthcare, travel, autos, fitness. This is actually the first unicorn in Brazil. Biggest IPO in UK's history at the time, Trainline. Sorry? Yeah, if you've seen it, it's amazing. And if you knew them before, you would not believe it because they were nothing and they turned around to be awesome. In fact, in London, Monday through Friday, Trainline is higher rated in the App Store than Uber. That's how big it is. So anyway, the last thing I just wanted to say here. So inspired for the product teams, empowered for the product leaders, love for product marketing, and then transformed is the new one. And that is, I will say, these were all written for product people. This was written for everybody from the CEO to any salesperson, anybody in the organization that wants to help. So this is much broader. And it's got all these case studies with real names. People are looking them up and talking to them, and I would encourage you to consider it. Okay. What I want to do is Q&A. I forgot to ask Amanda how much time we have for Q&A. George, Amanda, how much time do we have? Okay, good. It's over. I will say this. Normally, there's a lot of questions, so I'll be very disappointed if there isn't. But if you have a question that you don't get answered, or you think of something tonight or tomorrow, write down my email right there and send it to me. Super useful to me the questions because they tell me the parts that people do understand and don't. Also gives me inspiration for my articles. So I'll be grateful for your questions. But with that, I'll repeat the questions since I know you're recording this, so you don't have to worry about just anybody have any questions? Yes, please. What a beautiful question. No, beautiful question. Let me repeat it. Let me repeat it. By the way, that is explicitly a major topic in the new book. I know I sound like I'm trying to sell books. I'm really not. Yeah, and most of you may know all the content or just about all of it's available for free on the website and blog articles. So you don't have to buy the book to read the stuff. But this is a good question. First part of that, which wasn't explicit, but I wanted to call out, you said, in Hong Kong, most companies are not doing this. That is true all over the world. The thing that drives me nuts is it's true in San Francisco too. You can be with a great company and go right across the street and it's like they're 20 years behind. On my last big business trip, I was in Australia and I was in Sydney. And I was kind of feeling a little frustrated because I had visited several companies and they were just, let's say, at the beginning of the journey. They were not doing any of this stuff. And then I went to Canva. Do you know Canva? They're like beautiful, all this stuff. They were like a poster child. And other than their charming accents, it sounded like it could have been San Francisco. So this is what I find all over the world. I find I was in Shanghai, I was in Shenzhen, same there. Few companies, awesome. Most companies, not so awesome. This is really common. Now, the broader question you brought up, this is such a fundamental question. It doesn't take much today for a CEO to realize they need to change. Usually it's a competitor threatening them, a serious competitor coming along. And disruption is happening faster than ever. So yes, this happens. But then they have this realization. They know they need to change, but none of their leaders really know how to do this. And if their leaders don't know, who's going to show the company how to do this? This is a really common problem. Now, there are two ways to address that. And in those case studies I mentioned, half of them roughly did the first and half did the second. The easiest way, but it's very disruptive, is they bring in new leaders. Literally. Like at Trainline, that's what they did. Well, it was even more brutal. What happened was a private equity firm bought them out because they were horrible. And PE firms, they basically look for companies that they think are very poorly run. And if they put in people that know what they're doing, they can dramatically improve the value and make a ton of money, which is what happened. And so the first thing they did was they replaced the CEO with a woman named Claire Gilmartin from eBay. And the first thing Claire did was bring in a head of product and a head of technology. And I know all three. They're all three solid. And they all three, that's the playbook now that they use. And those three, they didn't actually have to hire a lot. They had to retrain. So they started immediately a major effort to retrain. They also had to hire a lot of new people, and engineering was all outsourced. Their technology stack was ridiculous. It was massive tech debt. They had to replace all that. So they had a lot of work to do, but they completely turned that business around. I mean, turned it into a poster child. And like I said, was the biggest IPO in UK history at the time, which I think was 2 years ago. It might have been passed by now, I don't know. That's one playbook. It's kind of rough, but that's one playbook. The more common playbook is that the CEO has leaders that they do believe in. They're like good leaders. They just have never done this before. They need to learn it. And so what they do is they bring in a product leadership coach. And in fact, that's what we we recommend these product leadership coaches. We have a network of roughly 50 of them around the world. I will tell you, the biggest hole is China. There might be good product leadership coaches in China. I just don't know them. You know, it's very hard to get into. I'm not even on those same social media systems. They can't access mine. It's just very hard. I don't know who they are. And they don't know, you know, if they know who I am, they haven't reached out. I don't know that. I have great people in Europe, in the US, in Brazil, in Australia. I just don't have them this is, like I said, my first visit to Hong Kong, so that's less of a surprise. But in China, I've been going for many years, and I still don't have those names. So that's the easier answer. A product leadership coach works with the head of technology, works with the head of product, and they help them through it so that they can learn it at the same time their people are learning this. I think that's the better solution, assuming, you know, sometimes as a product leadership coach, you realize, you know, this person is not able to do this job and they need to replace that person. That happens once in a while, but most of the time, that's the better solution. In the book, Transformed, there are 7 product coaches I profiled. And that was an unusual step for me to do. And I too say right in the front, because I wanted to make sure people knew we have no financial ties in any way with any of them. It's just that I knew that there are a lot of people out there at companies in senior positions, and the issue is they don't know even what to look for. They don't even literally know what to look for. If they did, they probably wouldn't have this problem. So they literally don't know what good looks like. So I said, here are 7 excellent coaches. Look at their education, look at their work experience, look at their values, look at their style. This is the kind of thing you want to look for. That's been working pretty well. I can tell you that a lot of these people have now a long client list. And the book's only been out 9 months, so I think that's good. And anybody here, if you want an introduction to a coach, email me and we'll introduce you to one. It's just probably, you know, you're going to have to do it remotely, but you can definitely do it. So that's a good question, a big one. Yes.
You were talking about like products is hard, like so like he said like I need to pay 100% attention like during the talk, so I did so. So like just to make a question really quick, like I guess you work with a lot of like different product organization company as well. What are things that you feel like would be a good like a green light to see that as a company have a good product cultures? Is it for example, like say maybe the CEO was the chief product officer, or maybe the product team is bigger? Is there any trace that you feel like on the surface, like you can look it up on LinkedIn or with the like desktop research that you can see, okay, maybe there's a high chance that this company have a good core culture? Thank you.
Yes, I think you're asking what are easier ways to figure out if a company is already good at product. Okay, first of all, you can absolutely, with just a little bit of preparation, know during an interview process what you're getting into. Once you learn what to look for. I mean, honestly, I can tell in about 10 minutes, and I'm not exaggerating, but I've done this for a long, long time. And my little secret is I talk immediately to individual contributor engineers. You can learn so much from engineers. They can't hide it at all. And you can find out what's going on. And good or bad. Now, bigger question is, if you set the bar too high, you will have nowhere to work, right? So you have to be reasonable. A lot of companies are hiring people because they want to change. But to your question, and you were going at, yeah, I do recommend go look. What I'm about to say is something I strongly recommend, especially when people are looking for their first product job. First, because that's the perfect time to do this. A brand name is actually like work for Google or whatever, is less important than who the manager is. And like you were going, go to LinkedIn, look at that the hiring manager's background, look where they've worked. do some research. It's pretty easy to tell if they are good at consistent innovation or not. And that won't tell you everything. That'll tell you a lot, though. And if that person is, let's say that person had 10 years at Amazon and they've been in the product organization, they're probably very good. And you decide that you like the culture of the company and all that, your job in that interview is, first of all, is convince them that you were going to be a good hire. But then it's like, tell that person, the reason I'm really here is because of you. I want to work for you. I want to learn from you. If I work like crazy, will you coach me? Will you help me become awesome? First of all, good ones, that's what they want to hear. But also, that's what you want. It's possible they say, look, the truth is we're a startup. I have no time for that. I need people that are ready to go right now. They might say that. But mostly they'll say, if you're willing to put in the work, I am willing to coach you. And I realize that's what my lucky break was. I had people willing to do that for me. For the first 10 years of my career, every single day, I had at least one manager assigned to help me get better at my job. Because I was at a company, we were talking about this, I was at a company that was one of its core values, was leaders develop leaders. And I took advantage of that. I learned every role I could. And I think that we all should be doing that. At Google, literally the #1 trait of managers, they do this survey every single year, the #1 trait consistently is, my manager is a good coach. #2 trait, by the way, my manager is empowering manager, not a micromanager. So no, this is not a big secret. Good question. Yes.
You have, as a product lead, you have to manage several teams, right? And at the same time, you have to liaise with different stakeholders. Could be from sales, marketing, customer success, or support teams. Every division has its own KPI. How do you, as a product lead, set those KPIs, or maybe set one KPI and align your KPIs to different KPIs of different teams?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because you mixed a bunch of things in there, and I want to untangle them. So first of all, were you talking about a product manager or a product leader?
I'm talking about a product lead.
Leader. So you don't have a bunch of teams, right? You have a bunch of people reporting to you, typically, and were you talking about director, say, of product management, where you have a bunch of product managers reporting to you?
Yes.
Okay. Each of those, and we're talking the product model, not the old models.
Right.
All right. Well, this is what product strategy is. That replaces what you just described. Okay. Creating that product strategy, which sounding like beating a dead horse, we say, but that's what's described in Empowered, is how to create a good product strategy. That's where you're factoring in these different goals. That's where you're making the choices about what you're going to focus on. That's where you're getting that alignment. There's a lot of input to that. There's a lot of work for that, but it's the product strategy. And as a product leader, you're responsible for that strategy. That's where you would do that. And if you're using the OKR system, that's what it's for, alignment. Okay. Yeah. So I realize the truth is the answer to your question is the whole product model, moving to the model. You'd sort of summarized the symptoms of the old model. And I'm saying is a very different set of symptoms, a very different world in this new model. It's not easy, but it's different.
Got it.
All right, there was a question here. Yeah.
So first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you for coming to Hong Kong. Like, we're actually so excited that you're here and hope you'll come back again. The question I have is around, which you touched a little bit about at the beginning, was AI and how it's kind of disrupting the ways of working for everybody. I think recently you wrote an article, or you shared an article on LinkedIn about how there's still a lot of open questions around how it will impact product management. But I'm curious to know if you already have seen any tools that have kind of replaced the work of product managers as well as complement kind of the work that we do today?
So the article that was being referenced, I actually did this. I published an article last week called AI Product Management 2 years in, because we're basically 2 years right now of doing this. And it does reference some research, but that's really interesting. But it tries to answer exactly this question. Now, the first thing the article says, though, is something we talked about before. When we talk about Gen AI and how it impacts, and just to be clear, a whole other discussion is how do we improve our products to, by including Gen AI. That's not what this is about. This is about how does Gen AI and Gen AI powered tools improve our jobs as we create products, right? So we're talking about this right now. And anyway, the first thing you need to understand is the answer to that is completely different based on if you're a delivery team product owner, a feature team product manager, or an empowered team product manager. Honestly, completely different. And not like good, bad, it's just different. To answer the question, if you're a product owner, I think you should be scared. Because I have seen tools, or at least prototypes of tools, and it's not clear to me why. I mean, it's an administrator. It was never intended, the product owner, to be a job anyway. It was always a role, right? It's a role. It's not a job. But unfortunately, that's kind of got changed. That's not really my concern, but that one is, I think, I do tell people that are in that job, you need to start up leveling your skills. Otherwise, you've got a big target on your back. If you're a feature team product manager, which is more essentially project management, it's a mixed bag. There's no question that tools are already helping in a project management sense. However, there's a lot of judgment still in good project management and a lot of trade-offs, a lot of back and forth, and a lot of horse trading, we say, that is probably going to keep people there for a while. So I think it's a mixed bag for a feature team project manager. The hard one, though, is what we've been talking about. And the good news is empowered team product managers, especially AI product managers, where you are one of these doing an AI product, their salaries are shooting up right now because they are incredibly in demand. So the good news is there's probably quite a bit of job security there. The bad news is the job is getting even harder. And that's what I was trying to shine a light on. I mean, it's always been hard enough. I think what I described to you in the last hour is pretty hard of a job. It's even harder because, remember, the product manager is responsible for value and viability. Viability especially is a really challenging risk with Gen AI, basically with probabilistic solutions more than deterministic solutions. Some products can literally, inadvertently kill people. One of the companies I advised does an insulin device. And there's very clear parameters with an insulin device from medicine that say, you gotta be within these ranges. And yet there's a real opportunity there for AI-powered solution, but they're both very excited and scared to death. So that's a product challenge. Yeah, and I don't see that going away. I see it, obviously the models are getting better all the time, so it's a moving target. But the short answer is, in my article, I say we're 2 years in, but as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to empowered product team, product manager, we haven't really made that much progress in terms of changing these things. And it's the beginning of the journey. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to unpack a little bit of what you were saying about the product owner as well, because as you mentioned earlier, you had 1, 2, 3 points, and you had recommended to move backwards, right? In terms of a quicker delivery first. And then you did reference the Scrum and Agile methodology as being more about predictability. Are you saying that it doesn't play a place? Would you recommend something else when you're moving to a product model? Like when a company's starting off and they're trying to hit number 3, traditional, let's say waterfall or project management, that may not deliver quickly, or are you saying that?
So I should be more specific. You could tell I really don't like to talk about that whole topic, and so I just kind of want to get through it. But it's real. So first of all, there's nothing wrong with Scrum. Scrum is not the issue. SAFe is the issue. Okay, that's the issue. Scrum is not optimized for predictability. It's kind of the antithesis of that. In fact, it's too extreme the other way. You can't just say, oh, we don't know. We don't know. It'll be ready when it's ready. You can just look at the sprint demo and decide if you like it. That's not how a business runs. So that's not useful either. But SAFe is waterfall. And waterfall has got advantages, but it's around predictability, not around innovation, not around outcomes. So what I was trying to say, well, I was mixing up a lot of things, but that was one of the things I was trying to say. The higher order thing I was trying to say is if you want to deliver outcomes, you need to be able to measure and prove outcomes. And in order to do that, we need small, reliable releases where every release is instrumented, telemetry, because obviously we have to prove it's generating the outcomes. We need an infrastructure for things like A/B testing, which is not the only way to prove, but it's a very good way to do it. And we need the ability to respond. We don't really know if something delivers the outcome we want until it's live. We need to then quickly respond. We can't wait months and quarters for that. So I was just trying to lump all that stuff in. Not only is it in the book, there's an article called Changing How You Build on our site, and it will focus just on your question. Because there's a lot there. It's just that, honestly, that's been solved for 20 years. I don't know why it's still an issue. Well, I think I know why. It's just, I don't like it that it is. The CIOs were tricked because they fell for the marketing story. Yeah. I can repeat if you, go ahead. Sorry. You like Mike.
Thanks, Marty. Very great presentation. So I am quite lucky that I'm in an organization that with all the roles that you have written, I'm kind of like in the middle of all of them.
Good.
And then sometimes I'm the stakeholder, the troublesome stakeholder. But my question is, because you don't actually have a process, and then it seems to be all based on a model and the belief of your model. So how do
principles?
The
yes.
principle itself.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to advise an organization implementing your model, there must be some way that they can adopt. Since there's no process, there's basically the model itself. How do you actually help it to implement? For example, if in my organization I have different stakeholder, they already have their own principle, their own belief on what they see, and then we rely on some tension between different functions to make things right. So, but I just couldn't imagine that. Hey, is it a training or is it some things that you do so that from top to bottom, everyone can align in the same principle?
Yeah. Well, okay. There's a couple things we should talk about in there. One, what I did in the last hour or so is I showed you a lot of the problems with process, but I didn't say like, well, here is a better process. It's not about process. That's the most important thing. In fact, even though right now I'm very frustrated with Elon Musk, he is right about this. He likes to say the problem with big companies is they use process as a substitute for thinking. And he's spot on about that. And I will tell you, of all the company leaders out there, the one thing they're all scared to death of, Jeff Bezos for 20 years, he's been talking about day one versus a day two company. The difference? process takes over. There are, and by the way, one of the things I really like about China is that they're not obsessed with process. And I'm so grateful for that. Because like you go to Europe, they're process obsessed. They can't do anything without a formal process. And it's terrible. It is terrible. That is a recipe for failure. Of course, there's process for everything. There's processes developers use to check in code. There's processes we use for discovery techniques. There's processes we use to do development. You know, Kanban is a process. That process itself is not the problem. Making process the driver, becoming a slave to a process, that is terrible. That's what you really have to fight. And I understand where this comes from. I really do. And it's not, when you scale, it's rarely a problem in startups. Startups don't have the luxury of even talking about this. But when you start getting bigger and you're trying to scale, there's essentially two ways to scale. The tempting way is with process. And there are all kinds of consultants out there who want to sell you their process to scale. You should run from them, in my opinion. Run. The other way of scaling is with leaders and coaching, which is what you heard me say. So you didn't hear me really describe an alternative process because I was describing the real alternative, which is strong leaders and coaching. And that is literally what we mean by founder style leadership. Product sense combined with product coaching. Yeah, it's a big topic. But I did want to say there was one, the book Transform does have a bunch of techniques for how to change. And one of the things, to answer your question, when this is more like my partners and I, when we are talking to a company that's ready to embark on a big change like this, we like to start by getting the whole leadership team together and we call it an executive briefing, where we are getting, and we invite all the stakeholders, all the senior leaders, because it's really important for them, first of all, to understand what they're getting into. The worst thing is they go for a few months and they realize, oh, they're never going to do this. So we want them to understand that, and we want them to all understand the whole idea so that they understand how they can help and how it works. They need that one way or another. Now, you can just give them a copy of the book, or you can do something proactive to explain it to them. But you do need to do that if you want to change. Yes.
I'm very excited that you came to Hong Kong. Thanks a lot. Could you touch on the financial aspects on this? I mean, a lot of the companies I work for, the CFO basically turns everything into a waterfall process because you have to, ask for the money and stuff. So in your model, how does the financial part?
Perfect question. And, so everybody knows he's right. A lot of the way it works is, for a lot of the companies, is they're funding projects. Everything has to fund a project. That's where it's all kind of coming from. You heard me say the way they run, they allocate resources and they're funding projects. The truth is it does require change, but the good news is not a big change. And here I go again. There's a whole section in the book that talks about literally the objections from the CFO and how you address them. Because this is 100% every company you're going to deal with this. And the main change, though, just so you can see it, you don't have to go read the whole thing, is you encourage, first of all, at a highest level, this relates to Peter's question, at the highest level, what we want to do is test this model out. And we do that with pilot teams. That's 1 or 2 teams, small investment, small risk, small cost, fast, and that you let it prove itself before you roll it out. And one of the things we talk with the CFO is, instead of funding a project, fund a team for a quarter. And that team is delivering an outcome. If you don't like the results, okay. I have never met a CFO that didn't actually like that better. because that's what they want to do, but they're forced to instead fund a project. It's the closest thing they can do. But what they really want to do is fund an outcome. That makes sense? Yeah, so it's actually pretty minor for them, and they can get used to this and then decide. And one of the questions I always ask them, like, so you, if you're funding projects, are you tracking how many of them deliver what they promised? Most of them like, well, we did, and then it was too depressing, so we don't even, track it now almost. And I'm like, well, okay, so that's not working that well, right? So, and they're like, yeah, but what else is there? And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about the alternative, because there's actually other ways to do this, and you can see if this works better for you.
Okay, last question.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Hi.
Hi, really enjoying the speech. I'm really on board on the concept. And my question is, as I'm now a supporting role in the product competencies, I'm in the product designer competencies, and I really wish the product leaders and product managers have the same vision as me, meaning the product operating model. But so over the past 2 to 3 years of like all this culture influences, stakeholder management, I find it hard to let them realize they should upskill. Have you ever come across an example where you help your client or you help some person in the client team to arouse awareness of the product leaders they should train themselves?
Well, I mean, there's a lot I don't understand about your context. In fact, you use the term client. Does your company serve other businesses? Is that what's going on?
I'm in-house. I mean, your client, meaning you coach the other companies.
And
yeah.
what role do you have?
A product designer.
You're a product designer.
Yeah.
Okay. So good. All right. So of course, you're not the first person to realize that a lot of times the leaders really need help, right? I mean, that's normal. But it's, of course, can be very awkward. And, the truth is sometimes they know already they need help. Sometimes they don't. Hopefully they will realize they do. To really make change, that's the leaders that need to understand. You can plant some seeds with these leaders. You can mention, you can forward articles, things like that. But what I do recommend you can do. So because the way this question is usually framed is, what can I do even if my management doesn't support it? What can I do as an individual? And there's a lot you can do. And it'll help you either at your current company or in your future companies. It will help. So I'm very confident saying this is a good thing for you to do. And that is, let's say maybe you're a product designer, but it's a feature team and not an empowered product team. You can go, first of all, you can raise your skills. You can talk to the product manager you work with and convince them to work with you and try to raise the game. You can do the preparation I was talking about. You can literally assess. It's the product manager is probably going to need more help than you, but you're hopefully close with your product manager. So you can, no. Well, okay, I'll tell you another thing you can do, because I love it when designers, there's no law that says a product designer can't be a product manager. And even if they don't have the title, they can do the job. And it's not that hard to do it a lot better than the people that have the title. So raise your game. Go ahead and learn these skills. Show your manager through your actions that you are capable for more. You can get out there and talk to customers. Start learning about the data. One of the things that happens when people do this is the managers notice. They may not care about the product model. They just know, wow, we have a designer that's like underutilized. We should give this person a bigger job. There are several people that have told me that's what happened after they did this. That's not really the intention, but that is a good thing. What we'd like them to do is, once you've shown this, to say, can you let us run as an experiment for a quarter or two? Let us run this way. We can be the pilot team. If it goes well, maybe we can spread it. If it doesn't, we can go back. That's what we go. And then, of course, if it does go well, you're probably going to be busy with helping lots of other teams. So those were great questions, which makes me feel very good. So I'm really glad about that. I hope this was useful to everybody. Thanks for coming, and we'll see everybody.
Thank you, Marty. Such a wonderful sharing. I believe a lot of us have enjoyed and have learned a lot of insights, and be it like whatever role you are, right? Like a product manager, product designer, development team, tech leads. Yeah, thank you so much. So some last words. Hand over to George.
Thank you, Marty, for coming here today. Really great to have you speaking with us. I just want to say a few words about JobsDB. So we actually have quite a few staff here tonight. We have product managers and developers and designers as well. So feel free to speak to them. We have about 700 to 800 product managers, developers, and designers across Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Australia. So if you're interested in how we run product and how we deploy many times a day and how we do product designs, speak to the staff, look for people who have the tech with them. Hopefully they do, and ask questions. Amanda.
Yeah, I've been through that transformation like a decade back ago when I was in JobsDB. So yeah, do speak to the JobsDB crew here. And I believe we can still stick around a little bit more if you want to do some casual networking. But otherwise, we have to clear this floor by 9:30. Yeah. So do enjoy some food behind. And there are some stickers of ProductTank as well. And Marty, will you stay around a little bit? Yeah. So feel free to have questions.
So anything you just